Hello, all. Give me a second here while I put this out in the world on all the socials. Oh, I just got a notification that I'm live on YouTube. I wish somebody had told me ahead of time. Misspelling live as love. Not the worst thing I've ever done, but and last but not least, the social media that matters the least, Facebook. As evidenced by actually trying to find where or if it put your post anywhere. Session expired, please log in. Everything's going great over there. You're doing a bang up job. Oh, I'm back in already. Maybe. Interesting. Ryan runs page completely MIA now. Okay, might have done me a favor. Who out there, if Facebook were to delete your page, wouldn't just let it ride? Unfortunately, I found it. I think we're good to go. So post that there. And call it good or sufficient. So yeah, this is going to be the last of these. I will have run out of comic books at this point, but hate sitting on, like I finally got, part of the reason, not just to get all my books out of old bags and boards, which some of them have continued to be absolutely horrible, so this was a good idea. But finally to the point where I can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm into kind of the weirder books that I never bothered to take care of. I've got darn near 100 bags and boards left, so I think I might have overshot that, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to finish this up quick. I don't know if this will actually be quick, but it'll be the last one. And you may never see me again with a comic book in my hand. That's not true. But, in fact, I'll tell you what, these first ones up don't need a bag and a board because they were gifts. Matt Amberg, friend of every show, ever, always, gifted these to me. In fact, these might be the last comic books I have like physically held and read, because I did that when he sent them to me. And who couldn't? I mean, the original run of Crisis books, like if you don't know this about Matt Amberg, he's possibly the best gift giver on the planet, but I don't know how he came across these. I know he was working at a shop at the time, so that probably had something to do with it, but beautiful books, all in really good condition. You know, these feel like something I should slab and display somewhere, but who knows how much money that would cost. A lot of people do, and it's more than I have. But for that reason, I do not need to rebag or board any of these. This one might be my favorite of the bunch. In fact, I think when he sent these to me, I was in the middle of reading it for the first time. Had never done so. Obviously didn't pick it up. This is a little bit before my time when it comes to actually collecting. But also I had, who hasn't continued to hear about this? This is just one of those storylines that kind of changed everything and continues to be one of the best, I think. It is, the artwork's fantastic, but just the scripting, the plotting, it's all very awesome stuff. So gifted me a complete set, and it's still something. This is probably the I don't know what that says about, I've already talked at length about how I've hung on to most of these just out of pure 90s nostalgia, because certainly they haven't gone up in value, as is with the 90s comics. So I don't know what it says that quite possibly the crown jewel of my collection is a gift I received like barely a year ago. I don't know. That says I grew up and collected in the 90s, but every time I look at them, don't have a problem with it. Because again, every cover, every bit. And as far as finales go, doesn't get much better than that. And I'm currently, fun enough, I started reading some Blade books because I never had much back in the day. And, it's October. I have recently revisited the Blade movies, and they hold up. 1, 2, 3, we can have some discussions between them. But Marv Wolfman is front and center when it comes to Blade's first, and I'm barely into, it's the Tomb of Dracula, where he showed up in issue 10, I think, and continued until 21, until his appearances started becoming a little more scattered. But Marv Wolfman, right there. Strangely enough, Marv Wolfman. I'm sure this hasn't gone lost on anybody, but Crisis. Thank you, Matt. So the rest of these are going to be from my dad's collection that I bought off of him. But as it turns out, as came to light in the last stream, he did, it seems, follow my lead in a lot of places. And I think we're going to see some of that here, even though it's still some books that I never bought myself. So it's cool to kind of throw those into the collection. There are a few that I'm like, the only reason somebody would have bought these is if they were, actually, that's not true. Some of them are X-Force books, and I'm always like, that was my book that I wanted for no particular reason. But X-Men was very big. So any X team, it's probably one of the reasons X-Force exists. Why the New Mutants became X-Force is because anything with an X in front of it was selling. And these are probably, I don't know. I have no idea, actually, if these are more collectible than any other X book of the time. But they seem a little less prone to, it's full on like Liefeld and all of that excess storytelling included, but I see a lot less of the gimmick covers, I guess, so it makes me feel like maybe they were just, I don't know, who knows, but that's where we're headed. But first, it appears gone down the Infinity route here, which that could have also been my fault. I was lucky enough to come in on, it's kind of strange because they were my books. I didn't collect a lot of, Marvel Cosmic Cosmic Marvel, anything like that. So it's kind of strange that I ended up with the Infinity, I think the whole series, Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, the whole run. There's 4 of these. So I don't know that I ever went that far, even with any of the Infinity books. But, you know, these ones were gold, shiny gold. So you were practically powerless to not buy 4 of them. That's going to be the view for 3 more books here. Infinity Crusade, that's one I was missing. Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War. Actually, well, yeah, I think, wasn't that the order? Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, and Infinity Crusade. Crusade must have come later, because it was, let me see if I remember that storyline, which I have, it's been fairly recently that I read it, actually, because as I probably also mentioned before, a lot of these I don't remember. Even though, I mean, as time went on, I reread the books less and less, let's say, you know, because I was so collector-minded at the time. I would read them once and then make sure they were still in good condition by not actually reading them. So, but pre that mindset, I was like, I would read these things millions and millions. In fact, what we're going to get towards the end of the stream are those books, the books that I did, the earliest books that I bought that I just read and reread and read. And you're going to see that it shows. But I went back and reread fairly recently the Infinity books because I didn't remember nearly anything about like the broad strokes of the story, you know? Like I remembered the fact that it had like all of the Marvel universe involved to some extent. You know, Ron Lim was out there drawing every single character, sometimes in every single panel, it seemed like. So that was, I remember, for young Ryan, that was one of the draws, but I didn't remember anything about the broad strokes of the story necessarily. So why I think Infinity Crusade, and this one's way after, but to point, why that Infinity Crusade came later, if I remember the story correctly, was because Adam Warlock's personality split, right? And it was the Magus or Magus that was the evil one that was largely behind, you know, actually not largely because it was Thanos for a while, wasn't it? Forget how that worked out, but Magus was in there somewhere. That might have been, Thanos was Gauntlet, War might have been Magus, and then Crusade was when his positive side, the nice lady, came in. Nice lady. To even things out. So this is interesting. My guess would be this is one that my dad got from... My dad had a business of his own where he would go to places and clean. And apparently he ran into a guy that sold him a bunch of books when it came out that my dad was, you know, doing a bit of speculating. This one came with some cards, so it's bagged. I don't know much about this, the quote-unquote pulse-pounding premiere of a brand new Marvel superstar in... I assume they're talking about Annex, the bad guy on the cover, which think we all know how that worked out. Recognize the name of Annex at all. Which was, again, how it often went. But that is a cover by Tom Lyle? I admit I'm unfamiliar with, but Shades of Bagley. Can't go wrong. I wonder if that was on purpose. I mean, some of it would have happened, right? Because who's not a friend or a fan of Mark Bagley and the like and all the greats, but it often seemed like when they drew on a replacement for some talent that probably left to go to Image, around this time, that oftentimes you could draw a straight line between them and another artist of sorts. I wonder if that was a conscious thing, were they trying to replicate some of the artists they were losing? Or was it more of a happenstance? I don't know. Seems a little interesting that the new guy you would get for Spider-Man looked a little bit like Bagley if you squinted your eyes, but who knows? So these we've done when we did my round, so this might have been another case of, or who knows, word got around. Carnage was big. You would have known to buy some Carnage books if you were any kind of speculator worth your salt. Even though this is from the Maximum Carnage storyline, which was when Carnage first appeared, it was like a 3-issue arc. Like, it wasn't much. And then when he was freaking huge, I remember that was one of the books that I got like in real time that like shot up in value immediately. So I was so excited that I had myself a copy. But then, in fact, not long after, was the Maximum Carnage storyline, which was like 14. What does this one say? Yeah, 14. Oh, Tom Lyle again. 14 books. So obviously they did the thing, where, oh, this is selling. What's wrong with selling hundreds more of them? Well, not much, I guess, unless you like. Probably still some bitter speculators out there. I am not bitter in the least, I'm maybe not kind to my own era of comic books, but I do look back on it fondly and can come across a baddie storyline and just shake my head and go, oh, the 90s. And not that everything that came out of the 90s was bad, obviously. I just didn't buy many of the good ones. I want to say I did go back and read the original Carnage, which I believe was Bagley. The original Carnage storyline. And it holds up. Like, I feel like I know, Adam, you're going to give me, a lot of people besides Adam would give me grief for this, but for some reason, I attached to, actually, I can't, I have no reasoning. Like Liefeld was more my jam than McFarlane, but also Eric Larson, which I feel like is a little more justifiable and probably a little bit more common of a conversation if we're talking about Spider-Mans, but I attached to those artists more than McFarlane for whatever reason. So I bought those books. I bought Spider-Man because Eric Larson was doing the books. I don't know that I ever bought a Spider-Man because McFarlane was doing the books. Okay, so we're getting into some very interesting ones, way before my time. So this would be from quite possibly that person's collection that my dad was able to procure. This one is a #1, so it would make sense, but it's not a title I'm familiar with actually at all. Oh, but it's got a cool cover by Friends. Ron Friends would have been, and Milgram. Steve Milgram? Marvel Universe #1. Anybody? Based on Marvel's hit new television series. Is there a Marvel Action Universe television series? Did not know that. Who is that? Firestorm in there? Green Goblin in the background? Not a bad cover, honestly. I'm a fan. So this one, I think, isn't as impressive as it looks at first glance. Ooh, especially now that I take it out of the bag, it could be in better condition. But, right, maybe you've seen that somewhere at some time. But the color looks a little different. There's something not quite right about it. It is originally presented in Spider-Man #129. Okay, so it's not a second printing. It's just a reproduction of the actual one you're thinking of that's worth some money. I guess this is what I'm actually unfamiliar with Marvel Tales. So Marvel Tales may have just been a book wherein they reprinted stories from other books and covers, apparently, because again, I want to say the original, like the actual cover. I'm going to say Punisher's first appearance, right? Or the actual book is Punisher's first appearance. So this is a reproduction within Marvel Tales of Punisher's first appearance. Probably still worth something. I mean, we're talking, we're in looking at the Marvel thing in the corner. That's typically how I can tell you about the time it was, except I can't in this case. I would say that's still probably 80s, right? Couldn't be as far back as the 70s. But it's it's not a new book. It's probably not much older than I would think the actual Punisher appearance. Solid idea for a book, obviously. One that just reprints stories that go crazy. So we're headed into some Executioner's Song, which again is probably something that my dad picked up just by watching what I was doing, because this was the first crossover I actually completed, which I probably did by way of that mail order service, Entertainment Weekly, I think we talked about last time. But I think last time I did this, I didn't show you all the cards in the back, because I probably forgot it had cards in the back. So it's pretty cool. Actually, that makes me want to look up what the back of those cards look like, because oftentimes the pack-ins of the era would still be done by the team that was putting out the actual, Marvel Universe series or whatever it was, like the cards that came in X-Force #1, I think it was, were had the exact same back design as Marvel Universe Series 2, I believe. So they were probably produced by the team that was working with Impel at the time. I'm knee deep in comic book card history again. I think I have episode 6, right, of Chasers. The next episode of Chasers, just about all the way scripted. And it's going to be kind of the end of the season, but it's going to be a transitional episode, because eventually what that series is going to become is just me opening up packs of comic book cards from the 90s, or collectible cards from the 90s. Doesn't necessarily have to be comic books, but that'll go by season. What if X-Men Lost Inferno? Again, that looks like late 80s. Let's check. What the heck? What else are we doing? It's only 3 o'clock. Only been doing this for 30 minutes. I've got this handy dandy app on my phone. CLZ Comics. Highly recommended. That's What If number 6. I don't know why I had to look over there. It's right in front of me. What If volume 1 probably. Number 6. Nope. It is probably volume 2. Number 6, though, all the way back here. Looks like CLZ is recently updated, too. It's very nice. Yes, okay. That was November of 1989. Wow, hard to get much more late 80s than that, huh? Release and cover date match up on that one. So, does it say November on there? It does say mid-November right on the thing. But I didn't know what year, right? It doesn't say the year on there, does it? No, it doesn't say the year. Ha! So I did have to do that a little bit. More Executioner Song coming your way. This one is X-Men 14. So that still took place pretty early on in the Jim Lee X-Men run, or the not Uncanny X-Men Jim Lee run. And comes with an Apocalypse card back there. Is that what that is? No, Prey. Oh, Prey and Apocalypse. Or Apocalypse is Prey. Need to read the story. That would probably help in this instance. Nice Andy Kubert cover, though. I keep forgetting his name. I think I see him come up with the cards often as well. I'm like, Andy. I remember he was largely an inker, and I think he did start doing more covers and whatnot. Maybe around the Image era. Did he pick up some of that slack? Is that what happened? X-Men 16. So Executioner's Song went. That Jim Lee? Nope, that's Kubert again. Again, that's I like Kubert, but was he asked to quote do a Jim Lee, or I don't know. Whatever. It's good stuff. Looks like it's got a Archangel card there in the back. I'm of the generation that only knew Archangel. Like I would know, I had Marvel Universe Series 1 trading cards, which were, like mine and everybody's encyclopedia back then. That was what we had instead of the internet. But I'm of the generation that didn't know Angel for nothing. Only knew of Archangel. No personal experience with his life before. But also don't remember a whole lot of stories with him in it, so couldn't tell you much about his character. If he was like a pure, my guess would be he was only bad for so long, and then he became a good guy again, but maintained his much cooler looking Archangel design. That would be my guess. So, another Kubert, X-Men 24. I had to guess, this one might have been picked up by any such speculator because it was Gambit and Rogue finally getting together. That was a big thing. The will they, won't they of the era, quite possibly. This is X-Men 15, so we're a little bit out of order here. But with a Hunter MIF card. Really want to see the backs of those cards. Here's a little bit more information. So yes, if I were good at self-promotion at all, I would continue to tell you about Chasers, which was one of the earliest shows I began on this channel. So it hasn't, I want to say it hasn't aged well, but it certainly shows its age. You can tell between episode 4 and 5, I think it is, where, you know, I pretty much upgraded my entire workflow and setup and using a different editing platform. And so a lot has happened since the beginning of that series, both within that series, but on this channel. Here's an obvious buy for any speculator or fan. Of the time. X-Men #1. I'm still bummed somewhere that I didn't get, because this was like, in fact, that might have been the farthest right side of that big, you know, it's a big, gosh, what do you call that? It fits into one big picture. There's got to be a better way to say that. It's not triptych. Stop thinking that. It's something else. Quadrileptic. This is a second printing. I thought I knew the big secret back in the day that second printings were distinguishable by their gold backgrounds, which was kind of a neat trick because second printings were never going to be worth anything, although there probably are a few that have bucked that trend. But giving it the gold background kind of gave you an extra impetus to buy it. New Mutants 87 would be the first appearance of Cable. Pretty classic Liefeld cover there. Interesting. I'm enjoying some of these ads that I'm not showing you, but Adventure Vision, I feel like looking that up. Especially doing Tetris Tuesdays at 10, by the way. I've not actually come across, or actually used a cassette, a video game cassette, but I am often emulating them. So we've got 3 more, and then we're going to retire that pile. If the higher it gets, the more cropped that image gets. If that's stressing you out, don't worry. We're almost there. Tempted to say I didn't have, this was not that many comics to go through, but now that I'm looking at, like I said, towards the end of this session, we're going to get into those things I rip off the back, like they get electrified from ripping them off like that so quickly. But because of that, they're like static super cling. So it's hard to get them off my hand, but also they immediately stick to the wall or the trash can behind me. Oh, I didn't show you what the card was in that one. Sorry about that. X-Force card they got back there. Is that straight up cable? Prey cable. So yes, there's some sort of a theme going on with who. Am I wrong in... I thought Executioner's Song was... Like, that's like Strife's coming out. Like, that's where the whole mystery with Strife was laid bare, right? Am I wrong about that? Where he was confirmed Cable's clone, and/or Cable was confirmed. Nathan Gray, Scott and Jean's kid. Spoiler, maybe, if I'm right about that. All right, now we're getting into the X-Force books. Which I don't know how many times I've mentioned it. X-Force was my book. That was the one I chose for whatever reason. That one's stuck underneath my desk. Should take a picture of that mess back there. I don't know. I just jived with X-Force. That was the one. I think it was probably, I don't know. On a good day, I like to think that, that bit of me that likes an underdog, that's just a little bit off of mainstream, went for the X-Force book instead of the X-Men book. But I remember more than anything just buying for artists is what it was. So, like, I latched on more to that than anything. It wasn't the characters, obviously, although it extended to the characters, and then I would pick up any books where they crossed over, but I don't know. It's that. I think that's what I keep coming back to. Is there's just no. It's like I had a conversation with Adam, who kind of gives me grief for going Liefeld over McFarlane. You didn't have any choice. It was like whatever spoke to you, that's what you chose. You were a kid. You had no power other than that particular capriciousness. Okay, we might have to split this pile. I have no way of knowing if any of these old bags and boards are actually acid-free. I feel like that would have been a thing in the 90s. Comic book collecting was absolutely a thing at that point. They were basically staking the industry on it, doing entire runs because of it to be collectible. But I don't know. This is the one, X-Force number 2, that does look like it had a little zhuzh, a little something. I think maybe the X is somewhat shiny there. I don't know if that comes across at all. Some kind of different ink going on there, but and this one I kind of lucked out with. So when I bought X-Force number 1, which I believe I came into X-Force after number 1 had already happened. I have number 2, so it might have just been with number 2. But there was always like, oh man, like X-Force 1 I think was an actual back issue that I had eventually purchased, but it was before I knew that the bag meant anything. It was also probably at the time where I was like, that was starting to matter to me, like the collectability of it versus, just having a comic book. So I tore open my X-Force number 1. That is not in the bag anymore. And actually I have an entire collection of the cards too, but I think I got those after the fact. But my dad, quite possibly following my lead, bought himself an X-Force number 1, or got one, and did not open it. So complete with cable card there in the back. Which I know the value of some of these depends on what card you got. Actually, there's 2 cards in there. If you saw, one of them looks like an ad or something, which is probably also worth money. Bag is putting up a little bit of a resistance. Don't love how that came out. Yep, I don't think I have a choice. Just the bag is curling up in there as I slide it in. I do think I like these bags that I got a little better than the BCW ones I had. They're a little stiffer, which is easier for obviously loading the comic, but I don't know, they feel like them a little bit, shinier. So this one's got a big fat crease right there. It doesn't look like a, what do they call it? Like a mail-in crease. They used to, and I think this was pre that time anyways, but at this point they had stopped doing that. But they used to just fold the comic up to stuff it in your mailbox, Just a common, which that's one of the more interesting things that I don't think I got into enough in, probably would have been, actually I don't know. The Chasers episodes are more about comic book cards, so I speak a little obliquely about the actual comic books. But the interesting thing about, at least I find it interesting usually, comic books is that they didn't start out as collectible. That wasn't an idea that occurred to people. Although the nostalgia, would have always been a factor. So, there would have always been people that like hung on to things from their childhood because it was from their childhood and they always had fond memories of it. But this whole idea of a comic book collecting market where you would hold on to it, it would go up in value, and there would possibly be some sort of exchange or exchange rate, didn't actually start happening until, is it 60s that started to come into vogue? Which is just, it's almost, you don't think about it, like comic books have just always been collectible, right? Like was built into it, but it wasn't. They were more often just books, stories. And they still are, obviously. Oh, here's a cool cover by Morgan. I think Tom Morgan it would have been, for Punisher 2099 number 2, which I'm not even talking about these as I pack them, but the 2099 books, I believe I got all of the early runs on them. I didn't go much farther than that. Like I didn't buy, I think Ravage 2099 was probably the last one I bought, and even then that was because it was like Stan Lee's first story or whatever it was. I forget what the tagline was on that, but Punisher 2099 number 7 I'm not sure what the impetus would have been behind that one, other than you like the book. So these, strangely enough, did not start out in my collection. These are not ones that I purchased, although I wish I had. Daredevil, especially the John Romita and Ann Nocenti eras, which I don't even know if they overlapped, but those are like the two artists and writers that I think of often, were like amazing. Like those were the books that I read and felt like I was reading an actual book. Those and the Peter David X Factor things, which again I also didn't collect, so I don't know how I came across them necessarily. It was, in fact, it might have been the Peter David Quesada era. Was that a thing? Of X Factor. But anytime I read books like that, Daredevil and that run of X Factor, I was like, oh, these are serious. You know, it was, even to my young mind back then, distinguishable from what I was reading in, say, X-Force or something like that. So I look back on them almost more fondly, even though I had far less of them. So these would be from that collection that my dad himself purchased. Fair amount of Typhoid Mary stuff, actually, it looks like, which is kind of interesting. I think she's still around. Matt would be a better person to ask about that once again. I think end up getting married or something, or she married Fisk, or both, or it's a fool's errand to keep up with any of that. This one says the fall of mutants is coming. I wonder what storyline that would have been. House of M would have been much later than this. Fall of mutants. Daredevil Wolverine, though. Speculator or fan could have seen that book as being purchasable from a mile away. Hey. Kind of wish I had that comic. Meatloaf, humongous rock star of the universe. I mean, would I trade it for this Daredevil? Probably not, but I bet the Meatloaf comic book was a fun read. I watched the Behind the Music. You guys remember Behind the Music? What an excellent show. I have a lot of fun with that show. But the episode on Meatloaf is especially entertaining. Everybody just calls him Meat or Loaf, I feel like. More meat. It's funny. R.I.P. I think we're going back in time here. Again, judging by that upper left icon. This one also referring to some sort of mutant massacre. The mutant massacre continues. What mutant massacre? Okay. This is cool. Looks like a... Yep, and I got them all. 4-issue limited series for, let's do these in order here. And I guess the Marvel 25th anniversary logo should be a dead giveaway, right? What year was that in? Are we still late 80s? 89? I will look it up again in a second. I'll get this up on screen for you. Firestar. From the X-Men, the New Mutants, the White Queen. Firestar. Volume 1. 4-issue miniseries. 86. So. We are going back in time. Firestar looks familiar to me. Like, again, I think is that who I called out earlier? There was like a cover and I was like, is that Firestar? Did I say Firestar? Or did I say Firestarter? Again, I'm from the 90s. We make that mistake. It's a Prodigy joke. I mean, it wasn't really a joke, but... Number 2. I don't know much about Firestar, is what I'm saying. That's the end of that story. Which you could say for a fair number of Marvel characters, right? I could pick them out of a lineup. Couldn't tell you a thing about them. So 1986 was the 25th anniversary of Marvel. To be remembered. How long did that go on for? Did they milk that for a single year, or... I mean, I guess... It wouldn't be milking it if you did it for just a single year. Did they milk it beyond a single year? Is the question I might be asking. Bunch of great covers, though. In fact, who should I be shouting out here? Doesn't say. Rather than take it back out of its bag, I can check the list, though, here. Cover artist Barry Windsor Smith. Written by Tom DeFalco. Wasn't he a Marvel editor at one point? Penciler of the entire book was Mary Wilshire. Rare female presence. Well, this is cool. Just number 2? Yep. Strange. I hope number 1 shows up. This is a pretty classic storyline. Although not as old as you might think, I guess. I don't know. Man Without Fear. Miniseries, right? This is probably another one I would attribute to, not attribute, but Feels like Venom Lethal Protector sent us on something of a... Oh, that one's got something on it. Oh, no, that's the registered trademark symbol, not a speck of dust. Again, I feel like Venom Lethal Protector was the one that set us off on these. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, obviously. I mean, I'm reading The Tomb of Dracula. Even though that book, it is interesting how Dracula is portrayed. I feel like in the 90s, I'm going to say late 90s too, there was a run of... Why do I keep seeing specks up in the right-hand corner? I don't know what's going on there. Villain-led books. Oh, wow, 2 of these. Interesting. This is a pretty cool one. These aren't in horrible shape either. I believe I myself bought issue 100 of this particular series, so... And I've actually read this book because it's got a Shang-Chi story in it. I don't know if there's anything like any first appearance to it, though. I think it might just be a #1, but Marvel Comics Presents. Probably not volume 1, #1, but a #1. Volume 2. I would guess volume 2 on that one. It's a cover I recognize, though. You know, reading Wizard and paying attention to stuff like that. You know what all these covers... The cards, too, actually, would sometimes feature the covers, so... 2 of those. That's fun, right? Better than 2, actually. So last stream, I got into the Image comics, and obviously they were famous for flooding the market with #1s and whatnots, even if it was an exciting time for independent artists and all that. By time all was said and done, I believe the record is either held by Darker Image or Death Blow of all titles, where I have minimum 5 issues of their #1s in there. So awesome Sam Keith cover. I believe that's why I started buying Marvel Comics Presents at one time. Was kind of anything to get my Sam Keith fix, who was always such a strange artist to me, and certainly compared, I don't know, is he that strange compared to somebody like Liefeld, who I was also into? Not really, but distinct for sure. And luckily that appealed to me. And strangely enough, actually Wolverine 73, that's pretty... Is he fighting an actual Wolverine in that picture? Or a honey badger or something? What is that? Wolverine was... I might have bought more issues of Wolverine than anything. Possibly even more than X-Force. Here's the back of this one. It's a pretty good... What is going on with the camera? Focus. There you go. Pretty good Wolverine by McFarlane. Did he do this whole book? No, it's a John Romita cover? Is that right? Wolverine #6. Not the initial... Written by Chris Claremont. John Buscema was the penciler. Tom DeFalco was editor at Marvel for this book in particular. Also, Bob Harris, editor also. Glynis Oliver, colorist. Doesn't say who that cover is. That's probably Buscema. Is it Buscema? No. Yeah, that's Buscema. That's Buscema. 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 I feel like I didn't have some of these overlap the board. Probably doesn't matter, but I feel like I didn't have that issue. Yeah, that's Buscema. Two of these, not hard to see why, but very much a 90s comic book. Oh, interesting. This is really getting ahead of myself, but the episode of Chasers that I'm currently scripting, or have scripted for the most part, is going to be a bit on Marvel Universe Series 5 cards. And a cool thing they do with those, which if you don't want to hear me talk about it, stop listening, because I'm sure I will go over all of this in very similar fashion during the episode itself. But what they did with their, cards, often they would have 9-card layouts because that's how they fit together on the page. For Series 5, they did storylines. And the whole page would form a picture, and on the back of every card, I believe chronologically, it would tell the story. Still every card would be a character. Oh, nice. That hologram shows up real well, too. So it's a pretty cool idea for, the 9-page layout, which they had been toying with for, several years already at that point. But it features a lot of stories that I was unfamiliar with, and actually Fatal Attractions, which is what I'm bagging right now. And I think I believe every book in the storyline had that hologram right there. So I think I have at least one more with that hologram in that spot. I might be wrong. But I got 3 of these. I think this is after that Peter David Quesada run I was talking about. That cannot be Quesada. Doesn't look like Quesada. If I'm still getting that right. Quesada did? I've got to look that up now. Actually, how would I? X Factor. Volume. I'm going to say, was it volume 1? Yeah, I guess it might have been. 386. Interesting. They did not volume out X Factor as often as others, it seems. So this is 92. So I'm still going to say pre-92. I know I could tell by cover. That's one of them. Oh, that's Executioner's Song, actually. Writer Peter David, cover inker Al Milgram, penciler Jay Lee, fantastic. Can't believe I forgot Jay Lee did X Factor for a while. Sign me up. That's the cover I'm looking for. That's Quesada, isn't it? Peter David. No, Stroman. I might be getting him confused with Larry Stroman, which seems impossible. Why would you do that? Let's keep going back a little bit farther just to make sure I'm not crazy. Quesada. Okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah. Quesada did do covers for X Factor. And it was during Peter David's run. Although it doesn't look like he penciled the book. I'm just thinking covers, which again, given my propensity, that would make sense. Although Stroman's still in the mix. It wasn't one or the other. I mean, it wasn't like one for an extra long amount of time. And it looks like it was mostly Stroman. So I might have picked one X Factor cover that was done by Quesada and just transfixed myself on that forevermore. So anyway, oh yeah, the question being who did that particular cover right there. It doesn't look like Quesada, Stroman, or Lee. Jay Lee, that is. Again, it looks like somebody that was told to maybe do a Quesada, Stroman, or Lee. 92. Joe Quesada. All that to be wrong or right. What a great Quesada cover that is. I'm not saying that sarcastically, like it's not a great Quesada cover. I'm saying that like it was all along, and here I am just... Oh boy, this has a little thing sticking up there. Is that a rip or an overprint? Oh, this has something inside too. It's some sort of Sega Genesis insert for what I can only imagine was a Sega Genesis game at the time. But that little piece of paper is an overprint. Interesting. For the back cover. Let's just fold it in. Why don't we? That just increases the value. It doesn't. It's strange to think of the things, you know, it becomes a real Olympic sport of strange requirements. Like if it's rare because of a mistake, it's worth more, unless it's a mistake in a certain way, and then it's just worth less. Literally. Ah, yes, the much mentioned, which we've already done. I did this in my collection as well already, so. Already talked about it before. We already talked about it several times, but here is another issue to add to my collection of quite possibly the first, certainly the first I remember villain-led book. Not the first villain-led book. I'm not even... Venom Lethal Protector. And it looks like we got number 3 as well. In just the brownest board and book you could find. It's strange. Some of these boards I'm pulling out it's like they've sucked up the ink off of the back of a comic, which I would assume those are not acid-free, but also it's not the comic they're often boarded with. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. It's like they were reused after they've sucked all the life out of a different comic. I don't know, but glad I'm changing them out. There you go. Venom Lethal Protector, number 3. So the rest of these books have never been bagged and boarded. I've talked about this, but I kept, I kind of, based on what I was reading, what I liked, all sorts of other, again, things that I feel like you don't choose yourself, reasons, just kept these in a pile. So I've got extra bags and boards. If this was a package of 100, you might be looking at 35 there. So got more than, well, actually, I don't know. Close, yeah, probably more than 35 comics over there left to go. So we're going to pick and choose a little bit about which ones get the bags and boards, and then the rest will just continue to live on their own unless they make like bags and boards for, I guess you probably can piecemeal buy them. So whatever, I might be blowing smoke, but I want to do another stream for it. I might do another stream for it. This is all. I can't back any of this up. So these ones, I also mentioned, yeah, these might burn through them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, what the heck. These, strangely enough, are of the group. They're all DC, but the ones that I read religiously over and over and over, especially the Flash, which I'll get to here in a second. So I don't know why I wouldn't have chosen to bag them. Oh, actually, no, that's why. Because I read them religiously over and over and over, they are in horrible quality. They are completely ragged. So no reason to bag and board them at all, except for when you put them in a bag and a board, they just automatically look better. Look at that. So I'm going to do that with these because they were so near and dear. I did read The Flash. Maybe might have been one of my earliest books, in fact. So I bought these on the newsstand. How far back are we going to go? Flash 48. Yeah. So let's see. Quite possibly around what time I literally started collecting comic books here. These aren't in order, so. Flash Volume 2, right? Oh, I'm searching in the wrong spot here. Flash is absolutely Volume 2. Number 48 came out in, probably faster if I just Googled this, right? January of 1991. Huh. No, actually, that's right. Yeah, that's about right. So yeah, that's around the time I would have started collecting comic books myself for realsies. Oh, and once again, I'm reminded why. I feel like this happened on the first stream I did of this, but see up there in the corner, watch The Flash on CBS TV. I freaking loved that John. It's just still love. Okay, it's been a little bit. I rewatched it with my kids when they were young, and they wouldn't remember it. Evelyn wouldn't remember it. So it's been long enough that a child could forget. But for me, I rewatched it 5, 6 years ago and loved it all over again. That John Wesley Shipp Flash series, freaking awesome. Still good. Still holds up. That was quite possibly why was buying these particular Flash comic books. I mean, I guess not much has changed. I was about to say it was a real heyday between the Flash TV show and Lois and Clark, but that's just kind of never stopped. It's just all Arrowverse now, or whatever. Do not remember what was going on with Lady Flash there. Might have to look that one up later. This one, so Flash Annual number 4, I adore this story, or I did, although I feel like I've returned to it fairly recently, but it actually was another one that felt like a complete kind of book for me. You know, it was like, oh, that tells, which I guess was often the thing with annuals, but this one I read thinking, what a just nice all-around complete story. It's that gold dude touches Flash, and I believe he goes around doing this and might have done it for several, maybe Armageddon 2001, like it says up there, which this was not 2001. That was like, you know, the year that was so far in the future. And then he would see like a possible life path for that person. And for Flash, it was like he met this girl, they got married, had a kid. The kid was, I think, born with the speed, but without the, I think this might have been, it couldn't have been pre-Speed Force, but maybe it was before they really super defined that, or personified it even at times, I guess. But he was born with the speed, but not the aura, I believe is how it went, to like protect him. So he could go super fast, but like if he ran into like a fly or a speck of dust, it would hurt him really bad. Because there's a special word for it too, I feel like. But the story plays out that there's like, I think it's like, you know, chemical accident style again. They find somewhere, or they're struck by lightning, or, you know, Freaky Friday, to the point where the Flash loses his speed, but is then able to gift his aura to his son. And the final panel is like his son with the ring, like running full speed, and just great look on his face. And I remember thinking it was such a cool, I mean, it's still a cool story and an interesting ending, but it ultimately ended in that gold guy being like, oh, if he meets this girl, he will stop becoming the Flash, and that's bad. So he like makes it so they don't meet, and that story never happens. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But what were you gonna do? Couldn't ruin the entire continuity for just a silly thing like familial happiness. These Batman books, I feel like I give them the short shrift now that I've been talking about the Flash so much, but same deal. Read them to freaking death over and over and over again. That's why they look so poor. But remember them a little bit less than, oh no, I don't remember them less than the Flash stuff, because apart from that annual story, I couldn't tell you much about what I was reading over with the Flash either. So in any event, apparently had a real DC bent early on in life. I should crack these open to see what I do remember. I feel like it would come flooding back. This particular one I remember taking to school, and some kids saw it and were like, number 627, and like just laughing it up. They're like, it's never going to be worth money. Which they may have been right, and certainly in the condition that continues to be. But oh, if they only knew. So this next pile is like the real left fielders, because I kind of want to get these into bags, then quite possibly I don't know. I might be switching around some bags after I turn off the cameras, is why I don't really care. But I know I want this one in a bag, even though I have no idea where it came from. I think it might have been another. I'm going to move over here actually for this. Oh, I'm not going to have a microphone though. Okay, do it in front of the camera. No idea. No idea about Americomics, Dragonfly, any of this stuff. But my gosh, look at the art in this thing. Number one, the pages are like glossy. It's not newspaper stock or whatever they were doing. The art is fantastic. This is, I believe, where she becomes Dragonfly for the first time. Is it going to focus on any of this? Okay, there you go. But, oh, and there's a shade story at the end, too, which looks equally as good. Just real awesome poppy stuff. All credit to Rick Levins, who apparently wrote and penciled this thing. I think for the shade story too. Let's make sure. Yep, Rick Levins. So I don't know anything about this stuff other than it looks fantastic. So I'm putting it in a bag. The board. You know, tastes change. For the longest time, this was, again, in the pile that didn't have a Baggin board because I didn't know about the character, etc., whatever. You know, I valued different things back then. Fun find. Okay, so yeah, we're going back. Oh, man. So that Flash might have been the earliest Big Boy comic that I bought, but these coming up here, I bought these in 6th grade. It must have been, because I took them into art class, and my art class was I remember had this thing at the beginning where it was like you did a 5-minute sketch at the beginning of every day. It was on like these super, like not even newspaper stock, you know, like that. What was that type of paper you would get in middle school or elementary school that was like brown? You know, maybe it was recycled. Was that the deal? I don't know. The cheapest stuff. Like if you press too hard with your pencil, that thing would rip. Would do these 5-minute sketches, and I could pretty much draw a Darkwing Duck from memory, but from that cover right there. So not a whole lot of a variation. You know, it's not like I learned to actually draw characters after that. It's just that I could reproduce that Darkwing Duck from memory like nobody's business, and probably did so for those 5-minute sketches time and time again. You know, good thing it didn't matter what we sketched. It was just a, you know, get the juices flowing activity. So yeah, these might have been earlier. Okay, fine. How early were these? Because I was a massive, Disney Afternoon fan. I loved Darkwing Duck because it was, he was a superhero. Loved the Ghostbusters, although I want to say that was a Saturday morning affair, was it not? But that is, in fact, number 3, which came out in 1988. Interesting. I mean, I was young enough. I was born in 79, and this came out in October 1988. So yeah, I would have been 9 years old. So I can't imagine I was going to the store and buying these. These must have just been something that I pointed to and my parents picked up for me. So I guess that's as far, that's all that holds the record so far. And you probably know this is coming. Where are the Ninja Turtles, you might ask? And while I wish I could say, I whip out some cool Eastman and Laird books, it's not going to happen. We're going to get the books that looked closest to the cartoon that I watched religiously. Those were the comics I bought. I'm going to punt on this one. Nothing against Archie, but also couldn't tell you a darn thing about it. Watch, that's probably the only thing that's actually worth something. But sentimental wise, we're going to move on to the Mighty Mutanimals, which was not a cartoon. I think this was, strictly speaking, a comic book. Although, can't imagine they wouldn't have made a show. It doesn't say find this show on CBS anywhere on there. So I'm going to say this was largely a comic book. I mean, the toys were the thing, right? The toys were the thing, right? Yeah, we have that thing. We may always have that thing. There's kids right now that are growing up with whatever it is, I was going to say Beyblades, but I think I might be already dated on that one. But, they've got the toys that have the shows that, yes, there's some marketing at play. There is some money behind every decision. But darned if those kids aren't going to tell you that it was their favorite and look back on it fondly for the rest of their lives. Both can be true, is what I'm saying, essentially. And it certainly is for me. I bought the toys too. And those I love, even though, what do I got? I did sell most of them already. Oh, look, I've got some lavalier microphone foamies on. Good old Casey Jones here. I think I might still have Shredder somewhere too. Are you going to focus on this? Thank you. So I'll just put him up here with Crimson Dynamo. Crimson Dynamo? I don't think I'm going to need these anymore. I might. Don't throw anything away. Let that be a lesson. I've got a few movie adaptations in the mix. And I think last time we did would have been the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, comic book adaptation. I'm not sure how that exactly got separated from this one, because this one is from my collection. And I've broken the bag that it's going into. I don't care. It's not. Okay. It's not. All right. We'll call it good. Not too worried about this one. Whatever. If it rains, it might not get wet. That's all we're shooting for with this one. maybe it's one that gets taken back out of the bag later. The Secret of the Ooze official movie adaptation, and it's not like the first one. It's like it's a harder bound book anyway. Next up in movie adaptation land, this had to have been from a grab bag because I did not even watch this movie until very recently. We did a book club for movies on it. It's a podcast. Go check it out. But somewhere along the line, I got the movie adaptation of Krull. It's a great movie. Go check it out. This one I've already taped up, done my own repair job on it. Another movie adaptation, another book I read and reread and still love. Movie, book. In fact, yeah, I think I've read the novelization. Oh boy, the novelization. The novelization was written by somebody. I feel like I'm about to say Peter David. Rocketeer movie novelization. That's the book. That's the comic book. Oh, the comic book. Yeah, this is Peter David. So that's the comic book, written by Peter David. And it looks like the novelization might be him too. A novel by Peter David, yeah. Interesting. I'd never made that connection. I've always been a Peter David fan from afar from his X Factor stuff. Like I started rereading X Factor because of him for that reason, but never connected that was also what he did. This one's not going to fit, and strictly speaking is not a comic book. Let's see. Nope, won't fit. This is a book and record set. I don't remember this from my childhood. I don't know why I have it. It's not in great condition. It's torn up there on the back, real nice. Does still have the record though. Sure that's on YouTube somewhere. So, I don't know. That needs to go into something, but not just yet. All right. So this next pile These are absolutely some grab bag comics, except for these ones I'm going to bag first. I don't know if we'll get through all of the issues. I don't know if we have enough bags and boards for them. So I'm going to make sure to do these first. Again, none of which really need a bag and board. Probably choosing the wrong ones. Bagging based on personal preference rather than anything that might actually need to be preserved a little bit more. I read, who didn't, Mad Magazine. In fact, that reminds me. I have a box. I guess I am going to do another stream. I have a box full of Mad Magazine that I should probably bag and board, actually. Because I'm not getting rid of those. But because of that big Sergio, I mean, who knows? Would be Aragones, but Sergio Aragones fan. So had to buy some Gru here and there. This one I don't know how. Okay, again, I know how. It's the rattiest comic book I've ever seen, but Wolverine was my book, and I put every other Wolverine book in a bag and a board except for this one. So this one is either especially ratty or, I don't know, just slipped through the cracks. But to get in a bag and board this time around. Still a wonderful cover. Silvestri, right? Yeah, Silvestri was also my guy back in the day. In fact, there's an Image documentary out there, Impact of Image, something like that, where I think it's Liefeld or one of the guys, maybe McFarlane even. This one has a nice rip in it, so again, not sure why it's going in a board. But they say that Silvestri was like the actual artist of the bunch, like the guy. I think that just meant like he, and not that you can't tell by looking at that, but that he had like the actual formal training or whatever, you know, like actually knew about musculature or you know, like if you went to school. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but Silvestri, one of my favorites. Okay, we are down to, I can count them on one hand now. Looks like 3 bags and 4 boards, strangely enough. I hate it when that happens, because did I get too many boards or was I shorted on bags? Check the tapes. Actually, it won't help. So let's choose 3 more comics to go in bags here. These are some grab bag comics, if ever there were some. Let's put, I'm still a sucker. Let's put the real ones in here. I think we ended up, I don't think I'm going to go switch any out, actually. I think we might have ended up with exactly what I would have put in had I actually thought about it for a while. This one, I don't know. It's like it wants to be an ash can. I think I have the actual comic of it. It's not. It's not. It's like a marketing thing. It's a little promo book, so I don't. It doesn't seem like it actually would have been worth anything, but I'm not sure that Fantastic Four would be either. It's like a Christmas episode, but it gets the bag. Second from last. Like I've said, never really didn't follow Marvel Cosmic beyond Infinity War, Gauntlet, Crusade. So wouldn't necessarily know what the heck is going on in this issue of Quasar. But what a good cover. Is that Quesada's signature there? No. Who is that? Oh, great cover. And last, but also possibly least, I'll show you what the rest of these are. But let's put Wonder Man in a bag and a board. If only because there's some sort of Wonder Boy skateboarding on there. So, I mean, these are all just in such bad condition. You can see the top there. Nothing good. So, yeah, left out of the bunch is that wannabe ash can. The very first issue of Super Pro, starring Spider-Man, obviously. And this I can't actually, like, I have digital versions of most of my physical comic books, so I can actually read them someday. I cannot find a digital version of Super Pro #1. So I might have to scan that one myself. An actual issue with a, wow, George Perez cover? Shoot. Maybe I will switch some things around, though. This is like... Marvel Age was just a... like an ad, though, right? Mostly. Kind of what's going on. Tom Talks Hot Sheet. Is that Tom DeFalco? Probably. Yes, Tom DeFalco. Articles. More of a magazine in comic book form. Which is kind of funny because Marvel was tended to do comic books in magazine form here and there. Picture of Bob Budiansky and Joe Jusko. Yeah, that might go in a bag later. I mean, probably gonna get bags and boards for all these. What could it cost? My very own issue of What the? You've heard of What If. What about What the? Comic book comic. And then X-Men Adventures. I actually had a couple of, looks like this would have been around season 2 of the show. Only number 3 around season 2 of the show, so this probably didn't come out until that show was pretty much a hit. And then number 5 of it. Those got to be grab bag issues, stuff that I got just along the way for whatever reason. So that's it. I've now shown you every single comic book I own on stream. And while those might end up in bags and boards later, I'm not going to do a stream for it. But it sounds like I might eventually do. I mean, these are kind of just one-offs. You know, I'm not turning these into a series of sorts. These are just like, more often than not, I've got some time and who wants to hang out. And I know there's a couple out there that be interested in seeing some of these pop up. I feel like I would tune into a stream like this for somebody, but I don't know. So I guess the next time I do this will probably be to get those Mad magazines in some sort of a preserved format. Although I'm going to need different bags and boards. I would assume they make the right sizes for those. I guess come back to find out. Or drop me a comment and let me know. But until then, gosh, what else is coming up on the channel? There will be a new episode of a cinematic for No Retreat, No Surrender. Possibly tomorrow, if I get that recorded today. My girl Evelyn has a volleyball game here coming up in 45 minutes, so I would be recording that. So I've still got to watch that, actually. Yeah, it might still come out tomorrow, but chances are it'll be recorded tomorrow and then released at 8 a.m. on Friday. So that's coming up. Like I said, I have scripted out the 6th episode of Chasers, which will be largely focused on Marvel Series 5, which was kind of a changing of the guard. Not to spoil too much, but Marvel purchased Fleer back in 92, but their contract with Skybox wasn't up until 94. So in 94 was when they finally kind of went in-house with the cards themselves, which was hilarious in so many ways, because it was also the last real Marvel Universe series. It wasn't, you know, the crash was happening. The cards weren't going to go away, but it was kind of in the form that this particular series of mine has taken following the Marvel Universe series. Even though I want to say you're not going to find Marvel Universe Series 5. It's just Marvel Universe Series, not Marvel Universe 1994 is all I would say. So it's funny. It's an interesting period because it seems like they were in the middle of a rebrand of sorts, and then the crash happened, and it just kind of all bets were off from then on out. So it's going to be an interesting episode regardless. It's going to be transitional in that way, dealing with the subject matter, but also transitional for that series, strictly speaking, because afterwards like kind of season 1.5 of that show of Chasers is basically just going to be me opening up packs of cards, because I still have, I'm staring right at them, I keep staring at them, packs of Marvel Universe Series 5, or Marvel Universe 1994. I've just got, I don't know if we can complete the series. I do not know if I have enough cards, and I've already got enough packs that I've opened that have produced doubles. So I think the ship might have sailed on that, and also them cards ain't cheap. You know, back when I did buy these and that box and some other boxes, it was still a tenable thing to do, even back when I wasn't, you know, doing this YouTube channel really full time. So anyway, that series will eventually turn into a weekly run of myself and Evelyn opening up packs of cards, seeing what we get, and maybe strangely, my mother purchased it's like an encyclopedia of Marvel characters, but it's old even for those comic cards. It's a nice book. It's like hardbound, I think, and it's really fun to read through some of those character descriptions. My daughter started almost cover to cover on it. I think she fell off. She's a busy girl. But I think I'm going to bring that into the show, and depending on, you know, who we open up, we might go into that book. Even though some of those characters aren't going to show up there, because again, the book itself is not up to date, even by 1994 standards. But it'll be fun and interesting, and it'll, you know, be better than buying a book that is up to date, as far as that goes. So that's on the horizon. Older School is another series that I wish had come together more quickly over the summer. Now, the first episode isn't out of the question, since it won't have a lot of me actually skateboarding in it, but it will not take off like I had hoped quite yet, due to some technological but also seasonal reasons. So come back for any and all of that, and go visit patreon.com/Ryan_runs_ if you want to support any of this. It is a labor of love, mostly at this point, not to underthink the patrons that are there. You too can be one of them. I should have them up on the screen for these streams. I didn't do a graphic that makes that possible, so go watch any of my other videos where their tier has necessitated their name being on that produced by credits list at the end of every video. So if you want to be one of those people, go check out Patreon. If PayPal's more your speed, you just want a one-off, you want to do a tip jar thing. Again, probably shouldn't be speaking about that all that much for these particular streams that are kind of just one-offs. These could just as easily be kind of patron-only events, but as much as I love my patrons, I try to shy away from some of that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put a lot of this behind the paywall. I want it to be something that's for everyone. And if you're a patron, I hope you're on board with that to some extent. But there are still some perks. I do still do some. In fact, upcoming, I think there will be a patron-only video or post that has to do with phase 3 of the channel, which is largely going to be scheduling focused. I have seen some growth with the stopping of Daily Drum, which was this very copyright heavy series of videos I did where I played the drums on a daily basis. So it was just kneecapping, I think, the algorithm in a bunch of different ways. That is going to get its own channel, and it's pretty close to launching, actually, except I do want to get ahead of the curve in that. I want to record them and schedule them out there as well. So a lot of stuff coming up, even if I have to, organize it in my head here a little bit more. So if you're interested in any of that, thanks for hanging out for this, and please tune in for some of that here at Ryan Runs. I have no outro for really any video I do, so that's as good as any.